welcome to Salute. I'm your host, Bob Peters, and today is a very special day in history. On this date, August 14th, 70 years ago, the Japanese government announced their surrender and ending their involvement in World War II. And with me today is a gentleman who is a Marine, Mr. Bill Cumba, who has a big part of World War II history. Bill is 2 Silver Stars. We were awarded 3 Purple Hearts. Well, tell me what you did with this, the 3rd Purple Heart.
Well, some of my men in my rifle platoon were so much more severely wounded than I was that I told them that I wouldn't have nerve to wear the same medal that they did. So I gave back the Purple Heart. And I realized later that that was a mistake, but that's the way I felt at the time.
Yeah. Well, I know you have several other awards. You're highly decorated. And I'm kind of rushing into this interview, I guess, a little bit. But why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, Bill, where you originally were and when you went into the Marines. Why did you go into the Marines?
Well, I had a real close friend. We were students at Emory University in Atlanta, Georgia. And, you know, the Navy had its Annapolis and the Army had its West Point, but the Marines got their officers by sending representatives around to the different colleges and universities and interviewing people. And so my friend and I decided that that would be a good way to spend the summer together. And so we signed up for the program, and everything was going along fine until we had to take our physical exams. And I passed mine with flying colors, so to speak, and my good friend flunked his. And so as a result, I went on to the Philadelphia Navy Yard where the Marines did their officer training. And it was supposedly a 2-year program called the Eastern Platooniers class. And I got my first summer in and loved every minute of it from the day I got there, and was supposed to come back the next year to get my second summer's training, and then I would automatically, when I got my college degree, I would be commissioned a second lieutenant in the Marine Reserve. But the Japs bombed Pearl Harbor on December the 7th, 1941, I believe it was. And so that I expected to be called in immediately, even though I just had half of my training. But the Marine Corps called and said that they would try to leave me alone until I finished my degree at Emory University, and asked me to expedite my education by going to summer school. And I did that. And so I got my degree from Emory, and then 6 weeks later, the Marines called me into active service.
Mm-hmm. What was your degree in, Bill?
I actually got my degree in journalism. I had expected to be a foreign correspondent and to serve overseas with either United Press or Associated Press. Mm-hmm. But that never happened.
No. Yeah. So you, well, you want to take over Salute? You know, since you've got such a career, maybe you want to take over Salute. I'm only kidding, of course. So the Marines called, and off you went, and you were involved in quite a few battles. Two of them, Palelui and Okinawa. And tell me about, people don't know this, but after 60 years after the war ended, you went back, right? You and a guy, a tank commander named Lee Smith, am I correct?
Yes. There was a lady, Eva Wonderman, who lived in British Columbia, and she had a film company, and she specialized in doing war stories. And so she took Lee and me back to, I guess it was Palelui.
Yes, sir.
And to do a documentary.
There's no place on this island that wasn't a front.
やられるなという覚悟はしていました。
60 years ago, I probably thought I never want to see this place again.
本当に心苦しく思っています。
何もできなくてすみません。
The least I can say is rest in peace.
We had two of the best units fighting against each other.
We killed 52 Japanese soldiers. This sounds kind of cold-blooded, but it's one of the best experiences I had on the island. Thank God for the peace.
Came here when I was very young and started exploring, and I've spent many hours in the Marine Corps archives studying, researching, and exploring the island and doing a battle survey. So this is really neat to have the opportunity to be here with a couple of veterans who actually fought here. Bill Cumba was an officer, platoon leader in the 7th Marines. He lasted the entire battle. It was very rare for a platoon leader to last without getting hit. His perspective of the battle was different from Lee Smith's. The thing that's really neat about this is Lee Smith's tank is still on the island. It's going to be neat to see him climbing that tank after 60 years.
Fantastic. Who would have thought 60 years ago, I probably thought I'd never want to see this place again. And now I'm so excited about coming back, I can hardly wait.
It's a little bit different.
Very, very different.
A little grown up. A little more greenery than you remember, huh?
In fact, not just a little bit, a lot more. Actually, the bombardment just took the forestry right off.
You can see remnants.
The Japanese docks.
1, 2, and 3.
Yeah.
What is it?
The land of enchantment.
Land of Enchantment, right. Palelui, the Land of Enchantment.
Don't you see this beach looks so much different today, 60 years later?
A whole lot better.
Oh, a lot better.
One of the main things that I remember is a particular cave that we were assigned. Actually, we were assigned to take a certain ridge, and by the time we worked our way up to the ridge, it was getting dark, and I knew it would be suicide if we tried to climb that ridge. And we dug foxholes along East Road. We started getting fire from the top of the ridge. Japs were all over the ridge, just firing point blank at us. And if we exposed ourselves the least bit, we got hit. A Japanese soldier had been in a foxhole right by the side of the road. He would jump up and throw himself on the track of the tank and pull the pin on his explosives and blow himself to kingdom come, of course, and also disable the tank. In the meantime, we were hunkered down, you know, couldn't expose a finger. Finally, the third tank did make it to us. And I said, it might be a good idea to put a few shots of your 75mm cannon into the mouth of a cave. And we killed 52 Japanese soldiers running out of that cave. And there was actually a mound of dead Japanese soldiers.
One on top of the other.
One on top of the other. This sounds kind of cold-blooded, but it's one of the best experiences I had on the island, because as you know, on the type warfare we were having on Palelui, you had to dig them out, the enemy out, one at a time.
I've had the pleasure of seeing the documentary, and of course I know you, and we've talked before, but I want you to talk a little bit about, after now you're going to go to Palelui, and you're on a ship. Tell us about that ship and D-Day, the invasion of the island.
Palelui was a very small island, and we had the worst intelligence on that island of any island that was fought on in the Pacific. Our division commander told us that it was going to be a tough battle, but it was going to be a short one, and it would be between 48 and 72 hours that we would be on that island. Well, as it turned out, instead of 48 to 72 hours, I actually fought on the island with my rifle platoon for 45 days. And then when we were finally relieved by the 81st Army Wildcat Division, they still, we figured, had at least 3 weeks of tough fighting before the island was actually to be secured.
Mm-hmm. And you were telling me when you were first there about being on the ship and the first wave went in, and tell us what happened with you and the wave master.
Oh, well, we were actually in Division Reserve. I was 2nd Battalion, 7th Marines, and we didn't go in on the first wave, but we were aboard ship, and we were to stay there until they found out which of our initial units got hit the hardest, and then we were to go in and reinforce them. And so somehow we lost communication with the people after they got ashore. And so about 4 o'clock in the afternoon, the person that was in charge of our unit above ship was afraid that we were needed, and so he rounded up some small craft, and we boarded and went up to the wave master, and the wave master told us that he didn't have any orders for us to go ashore, and that we would have to return to our ship. Well, there was nothing to do but to turn around and go back. And of course, it was getting later in the day. And when we got back to where we disembarked from the ship wasn't there. And what had happened was, as soon as we disembarked, the captain of the ship turned around and went further out to sea to get out of artillery range of the Japanese ashore. And so then we turned around and went out towards looking for the ship. And we finally found it and asked permission to come aboard. And this captain, believe it or not, said my orders was to disembark troops, not to embark troops. And the son of a gun would not let us aboard. And it was pitch black dark. And for 17 hours, all night long, we floated around in those small craft that had no toilets on them. Some of the men got seasick, vomited, and we stayed there all night long. So finally, when daylight came, we went back to the wave master, and this time he let us in to go ashore. And so that was one of the worst nights I ever spent, floating around out there in those small boats with no toilets on them. And so we finally got back and landed the next morning.
Yeah. And in this documentary, you went back with the tank commander, Lee Smith, as I was saying before, with 2 Japanese officers, two Japanese soldiers, one of them who stayed in the caves, and the other one's brother was in charge of the Japanese soldiers that were there. And it's a very interesting documentary. We have some of it we're going to show our folks at home. Tell me a little bit, how did that come about? How did they know about you, and how did this documentary come about?
I was on the Oliver North show.
Oh, you were on Oliver North show?
Yes. He did a special show on Palelui and called and asked if I would be willing to appear on it. So I was, of course, glad to be on it. And as a result of that show, I guess
They decided to do the documentary.
Right.
Yeah. Let's go back to the island when you first came ashore. The fighting was, like you said, there was a lot of fighting. What were some of the obstacles? Why was it so hard to take that island?
Palelui?
Yes, sir.
Well, Palelui was so small that there was no real area. Usually you think about when you're in combat, you go in and fight for 5 or 7 days or whatever it is, and then your unit is relieved to go back and rest before going back in. But there was no real area on Palelui. You were on the front line the entire time. And that's what made it so hard, was that it was just constant fighting.
Mm-hmm. You know, you and I have chatted before. You told me about the dirt road and the tanks. Would you like to tell the folks at home about that dirt road and the tanks?
My platoon, my rifle platoon, was ordered to go. We could see a tall ridge in the far distance, and my platoon was ordered to go through this swamp and to attack that ridge. Well, by the time we made it through the swamp, it was pitch black dark, and we saw there was a dirt road that ran about 150 feet from the ridge that we were supposed to attack. But I knew it would be suicide if we tried to attack that ridge in the pitch black dark when we couldn't even see 10 feet in front of us in any detail. So I got on my radio and called back to my company commander and got permission to wait until the next morning to make the attack. And so he granted it. And so we stretched out along this dirt road, which was about 5 feet higher than where we were in this swamp area. And the next morning, we found out that there were Japanese all along this ridge, and they were looking right down our throats. And we could stick up our hand above the height of the road and get a finger shot off. So it was just an untenable position. And I called for tank support. Mm-hmm. And so after 20 or 30 minutes, I saw this tank coming down the road. And so it got up in sight of us, and then all of a sudden it stopped. And what had happened, there was a Japanese had been in what we found out later they call a spider hole, and he had a bundle of ammunition tied across his chest. And when the tank got opposite the spider hole where he was, he jumped out and jumped up on the track of the tank and pulled the pin, and the explosion was enough that it blew the track on the tank. Of course, he was on the smithereens, as the expression goes, but it stopped the tank. Well, when they found out about this, they sent the second tank in, and the same thing happened to the second tank. Well, finally, the third one got through, and I held up, and my platoon was strung out along this dirt road, and I held up my rifle so the tank driver could see something, and he pulled up in front of me, and so with the cover of the tank, I got up onto the road and reached up, and I knew there was a telephone on the outside of the tank that you could talk to the tank commander. And so I told him that we were getting fired on from the side of the ridge, that there were Japanese all along there, and for him first to take his machine guns and try to clear them out as best he could. And I said, I've also noticed a good sized opening up near the end of the ridge. I said, I haven't seen any activity there, but it'd be a good idea to fire some of your 75 millimeter into that thing just for heck to see what happens. And so first they fired on the side of the ridge, and then after that they took the 75 millimeter and fired directly into the ridge itself. And when seconds after they started firing into that ground level opening, the Japanese started running out. And so as soon as they did, of course, my men, as I said, were lined up along the road, and we started firing at them as soon as they came out. And then also the machine gunner on the tank was firing at them too. And so this went on for quite a few minutes until they were all out. And the next day, we found out my platoon was credited with killing 52 Japanese soldiers that had run out of that opening. And we found out later that this ridge housed one of the largest ammunition depots on the island. And so they knew what was going to happen when the Japanese, when that ammunition started exploding.
They knew they were in trouble.
And they'd be in big trouble. And so we found out later that that inside of that ridge burned for 4 or 5 days. Of course, as one set of ammunition exploded, it would set off another set, and it burned for 4 or 5 days. And of course, all the Japanese cleared off because the Japanese on the outside of the cave were being shot at with machine guns, and they knew what was going to happen when the ammunition started exploding inside, so they cleared out. But that was a great day because, you know, we got rid of 52 of them in that one episode.
Look at that one shell hit. That's probably from 75 right there.
Yeah, I imagine so. It probably aimed a little high, but now there's the mouth of the cave.
Right there.
See, it was torched. You can see the color looks kind of blackened
Yes.
from the fire. I'm going to help you down, you guys.
Okay.
So let me get down first.
And of course, they were running out of here just a few, just where we passed by. And
Well, you can tell just looking in here, Bill, there's all kinds of, everything's torched.
gracious alive.
There you go. Step. Good, good.
Okay.
Good job.
Right. Okay, here we go.
Okay. Whoop.
Gotcha, gotcha.
You sure?
Get your bearings right there.
Okay.
Look at that. See how it's scorched? See the metal
Yeah.
scorched? Just amazing.
What is this?
Look at the tabby. Look at the tabby here. It's all scorched black. The Japanese shoe.
Oh, yeah. Look at that.
This is cave burned for 2 days, according to the report, the official reports.
And, you know, this is where the big toe was, and then the rest
You
of
got it. Yep,
Oh,
exactly.
yeah.
That's right.
Gee, where's-
Hey, come on, take a look over here. I'll kind of support you so you don't slip on the rock. This is where the cave goes completely through the ridge. It's actually on a staggered level. That's a good drop, 40 feet at least. See it going
Man,
down
look
there?
at it. Look
Yeah,
at the
you
angle.
see the
Yes.
opening where it goes on.
Right.
I wonder how many square feet there is in this thing. It would hold a bunch of ammunition
Oh,
or
man.
anything else.
Look at that. Look at it.
I found this key in one of the crevices of the cave here.
Well, I'm satisfied there were people actually living in here.
Oh, yeah.
This is evidence that the cave cooked off. You can see a 20-millimeter projectile that exploded.
But back in '44, a few days afterwards, they said that this smoked and exploded for 48 hours after we fired the 75 millimeters.
That's
in
confirmation
here, and
right
that
there.
is really.
I mean, look at the black timbers in here and the walls. That means this thing was smoking. But over here, you can actually see a bomb, or remains of one that exploded. So perhaps this was a ammunition storage cave. And that's why they ran out of here so fast.
Yeah, it certainly explains why they were coming out as fast as they could possibly make it.
Yeah, that was quite the battle. You were involved in quite a few of them, even in Okinawa too. You had your share. But what amazed me about Palelui is, and you told me before, and it says in the documentary, you didn't have the best of intelligence and you didn't know about all those spider caves and how well the Japanese were entrenched into that mountain. And when you went back after 60 years with the tank commander, Lee Smith, and you met the Japanese soldiers, one of which, correct me if I'm wrong, he stayed in that cave?
For a couple of years at least.
After the war was over?
Yeah.
私だけ生き残ってされて本当に心苦しく思っています。これも私を返してくれたのはみんな遺族とか後々の人のために伝えてもらえために私を返してくれたんじゃなかろうかと、そういう気持ちでおります。どうもすみませんでした。はいはいはい、そうだ、そうになります。だからバトボックスからあそこまで昔は、そうです。はいはい。あそこが来た時の鳩場です。あの鳩場ですね。はいはいはいはいはい。着きました。いろいろですね。
You have a good idea where he fought in the ridges?
Oyama.
Oyama, which is the Japanese term for the southern ridges. Ah, Oh, it looks at okay.
一番最後の写真ですね。それからない。
He was an officer. It shows his rank as an officer. He was in the last command post cave. This color bearer was with Colonel Nakagawa. He would have destroyed the regimental colors on Palelui in the last command post cave. That's where he probably died. That picture I have at home. Picture of Colonel Nakagawa and his color bearer. And those were the ones who were killed in the last command post cave. This is overwhelming. It blows my mind.
そしてもう最後、もうこれ以上はもう玉砕しかないと言って最後桜の打電を本部に打って、そして誰かな、村井少将自決、それから中川大佐自決という、そしてあと残されたのが皆さん突撃したという格好なんですけど、
で
ただうちの兄貴は中川大佐のそばに寄り添ったという格好ですね。
This is all the caves on Palelui.
これが全ての
All
洞窟
these are caves. All the okay. Now the last command post cave. Here's a picture of it. Colonel Nakagawa's last command post cave. A communication cave, and this is where Colonel Nakagawa shot himself.
中川さんが自決されたのはこの場所でしょう。
His brother was definitely part of the elite Japanese army, one of the best regiments. He should be very proud that he fought with the best of the best. And he went up against the best Marine regiment, the 1st Marine Division. So you had two of the best units fighting against each other. Tell him I'd be honored to take him to the cave.
やっぱし自分が今まで何回か行きたいって叶えなかったこれが実現できたと。で兄貴のところに行って会いに来たよと。安らかに眠ってくださいと。こういうことですね。
You know, this is a great day because we can take him back to the cave and we can take Mr. Tsushita back to his cave too. Here's an archival picture taken in 1944 right after the battle. And this is the last pocket of Japanese resistance. It's no easy task, like Godwin was saying, because it's very rugged terrain. Of course, they held out in all the caves that line the bases of the ridges and sometimes at the top of the ridges. And it shows the valley, it's denuded, there's no vegetation, it's all blasted clean. And here it is today. And you can see it's very disorienting. There's a lot of jungle growth. The valley we're entering is called Death Valley by the Americans. This is a Japanese memorial at the entrance to the valley. A valley that the Japanese heavily defended. It was their last stand, was right here. And the last command post was deep in this valley. Americans had a very tough time getting through here. They couldn't because of stiff resistance. You can see some of the artifacts they've found around the caves in this area. There's many caves that are lining the valley here.
私たちの部隊はペリリュー本隊、これになるわけですよ。ペリリュー派遣隊というのはこれがもう鹿屋からもずっとここまで行ってここで本隊を据えたわけですね。
うちの兄貴はここですからね。歩兵第2連隊、ここですね。
It's very slippery. Be careful of the rocks and the roots.
こんなに数がなかったんですよ。もう60年も経ってるからこれだけ張ってるわけですからね。
やっぱもう砲弾が目あられの音降ってきたから。
萩山になったらもう相当米軍も扱ったんじゃないですか、萩山でですね。
もう木も吹っ飛んでしまったんですね。
This is a napalm bomb, jelly gasoline dropped from the airplanes. So this is what they burned the foliage and caves.
ナパームだった。これ相当威力あったんですよね。ナパーム。うん。そうですね。
Japanese cave.
結構入りますよ。これ4、5人か4人ぐらい入ってるんですかね。
防毒マスクがあるよね。
そうですね。
機関砲ですね。はい。70ミリぐらいの機関砲じゃないですか。
これまた米軍のと。坂9です。
ちゃんと作っとんなこれ。
Last command post. This was the communication cave where the last message was transmitted to Koror, Sakura Sakura. Perhaps one of these canteens is his brother's.
もしかしたらこの水筒お兄様が使われたかもしれませんね。
What was your emotion when you went over there?
Well, actually, the way I looked at it, I was doing originally what I was sent to do, and they were doing what they were sent to do. So it wasn't anything personal. We were just
soldiers doing your job.
We were soldiers doing our job, and so it was a real pleasure to meet them, and we hugged each other and stuff like that, and just were like old friends.
Yeah, like I said, I saw Once We're Enemies, the documentary, and you did look like you guys had a great time there, and it had to be different going back now. You're sitting in a lounge chair up on the beach and everything. You know, you're not fighting your way in. You know, the island looked like a pretty nice place now.
Yeah, it's really very nice.
And you had a good time, and you actually went to some of those caves, right?
Yes, and there's did we talk about Lee Smith?
Lee Smith was the tank commander.
The tank commander, and it was unbelievable that we found his tank that he had driven in the original battle. It was because all covered with vines and everything like that, but it was
See the rear of it.
Unbelievable thrill for him.
Be careful. Come on this way. Well, I don't see where I see D12 where I scraped it off. Maybe it's on the other side.
I can see part of it.
Well, let's go on the other side. Machine gun tripod, it looks like, 30 caliber.
That's amazing. This thing is still this good after so long.
How's the bow?
Yeah, the engine's out, transmissions are all out. See, the floor is all rusted out.
The documentary is called Once We're Enemies. You went back after 60 years to update people. Recently, the Japanese government gave you a call and they came over to your house.
Yes.
And you did an interview with them, correct?
Yes. They came over the 20th of July of this year. And the main guy that did the actual interview with me could not speak a word of English. And one of my, I had an eagle on a table back of a couch, and he liked that eagle and wanted that in the picture, so he had me sit there, and he had brought his cameras and lighting and all that sort of stuff, and but he had this lady interpreter, Marika, that was just unbelievably efficient.
Yeah.
And he would ask her the questions that he wanted me to answer, and then she would interpret it. It sounds involved, but actually it was very smooth.
Yeah.
And so he interviewed me for, I think it was 2.5 hours.
Wow.
And just was very good, and I thoroughly enjoyed it.
I am here to interview Bill Cumba, a veteran Marine who fought on Palelui and Okinawa. Okay, so we are making a documentary film about the Battle of Palelui, and unlike other wars, battles like Battle of Okinawa or Iwo Jima, Battle of Palelui is not. It's said to be forgotten battle. So and since Japanese emperor and empress in spring went to Palelui or Palau to pray for peace and to atone for the dead for both countries, we had this occasion to make a documentary film, and we hope to release it in the fall, in October. It's going to be in movie theaters in Japan, and we hopefully we can show it over here in the United States as well. We visited another vet yesterday. He was in the 1st Marine Division, and he was on the northern part of the island. We were in Georgia to interview him yesterday. And then we have interviewed one survivor on Japan side. He's 96, and he's the Japanese soldier that Mr. Cumba met on the island 10 years ago. I understand there are many veterans in Florida, but as we, this year, as we commemorate 70th anniversary of the end of World War II, those who are in that war are, perishing very fast, and it's getting harder to find people who, we can interview. They are all in their 90s, but we, feel that it's important to tell the story from both sides, not just, glorify those who fought on Japan side, but, U.S. side as well. And sometimes, like Mr. Cumba's case, they've had occasions to meet their former enemies and, to reconcile. And I think that's a very important process as well. And now, U.S. and Japan are the, steadfast allies. And so that's what, we hope the case to be, and not, enemies. I hope it's going to give the sense of how, there are a lot of sacrifices on the part of Japan, but not only Japan, but U.S. as well, because It was one of the hard-fought wars on the U.S. as well. And instead of 48 or 72 hours, they ended up having to fight quite a long time. So, and then as we heard, Mr. Cumba's platoon, he lost 2/3 of the men. So it was a heavy price to pay. And I understand that this was really, strategically speaking, in retrospect, maybe not necessary. So I think there's, a lot of lessons to be learned, and hopefully, war strategies to be smarter in the future. But we shall see.
You remember when you first came on my show about 4 years ago when I said to you, Bill, I'm out of time, and you said, I'm not done yet? Guess what, Bill? We're out of time.
I'm a big talker.
Well, no, I could listen to you all day, but unfortunately we can't be here all day. So you had Palelui, you had Okinawa, then you went on to fight in another arena. You were with China. You went to China.
Yeah.
So that's you had quite the career, and I want to thank you for coming on the show and sharing some of your experiences with us. And I know I'll see you around because you're always in the parades, in the sidecar, the motorcycle with the Marine Corps League. So, but I have to say goodbye.
Well,
would you join me in saying goodbye?
Yeah.
Okay. So all our veterans out there, active military and their family, we salute you for all you do. Till next time.